In a space too far from anything to be nothing, a blue light shines into the void. Through the shadows, shapes appear. People, stories, wonders, and mysteries. Live from Elgin, Illinois at the Blue Box Cafe, it's James Wilder's Tales by the Blue Light with your host, me, James Wilder. A little extraneous, but we're doing it anyway. This month, like every month, we're going to be calling in stories through this blue light. These stories come in all forms, wonders, science fiction tales, fantasy adventures, and horrors to make you shudder. So, join us as we discover new places, new people, and take new journeys together by listening to this blue light, like you might by the fireside. All these stories you'll be hearing today are brand new and they're written by yours truly. So if you like what you're hearing, put something in the tip jar or go find me on Patreon. But before we get to the stories, I was supposed to practice a cool trick to show you guys to start off this new year of the program. So all of you close your eyes. Okay, think of a number. Was it 7? Was it? Okay, if it was, you're great because I actually forgot to practice my trick, but that's not why we're here. So, let's call in something from the blue light. Oh, it looks like we have a visitor. Alright, today on Tales by the Blue Light, we have a very special guest. I'm proud to introduce to you Graelyn the Untamed, a wild barbarian from the hard-run fantasy world of Pretelia. Mr. Graelyn, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Your promises knows no bounds bringing me here. I've slain 1,000 men, and you will be just another tally of my glory, as will your countrymen.
Oh dear.
But before you die, what exactly is this beverage in your hand?
It's a bad wolf berry. It's one of the drinks they serve here at the Blue Box Cafe. It's my favorite.
Your favorite? I slew the king of Grisel with his own leg.
Wait, what are the mechanics of that?
Bring me one of those. I desire a bad wolf berry.
Yes, sir. Right away.
No, never mind. What is this other beverage I have?
That's coffee. That's normal coffee.
It's a warrior's drink. Bitter like the blood of my enemies.
Everyone drinks it here.
They drink bitter drinks by choice?
Yeah, most people drink it just to, give themselves the energy to get up in the morning to go to work.
You mean they drink this drink, this bitter, dark drink, as a way to motivate themselves?
Yeah, I guess you could put it that way.
This whole country? In all my days leading the barbarian hordes, I've never met a people who drank such a painful tonic of bitters daily.
Painful? I love coffee.
But did you like it at first?
No, it's too bitter. I grew to like it over time.
All of you trained to drink this paint juice so long as you grew to love it? I was wrong. This is no land I could prosper in. Blue light, send me back! Send me back! My hubris was too great. I cannot defeat the coffee.
Well, oh, there he goes. Sucked away into the blue light and back into his fantasy world. Well, that's a first for Tales by the Blue Light. I guess that means we should get into our first story of the night. We're welcoming in 2018 with a big old sci-fi tale. So get into your seats because this is one you won't want to miss. We're going into the world of my most well-known stories for the first of a brand new feature this year. A new, serialized 10,000 Dawn story. Yes, you heard that here first, folks. Every month on Tales by the Blue Light, for the next few months, you'll be hearing a new chapter in an unfolding story about the time-traveling, universe-hopping adventures of the 10,000 Dawn's crew. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our first chapter of this month's sci-fi story, Concert at Dusk. I've never even heard of the Foobles. That sounds like a fake band name, like the kind of fake band name you'd make up for a story if you wanted to write about the Beatles or the Monkees, but you couldn't get the rights to throw them in your story. Kinnan looked at Graelyn without amusement. Could you stop being like that? Like what? Graelyn said, throwing her hands up. Like, Kinnan threw her hands up. That. Graelyn put her hands down and grumbled. I'm not being like that. I literally just mimicked you. Graelyn shrugged. Whatever, so you want me to rescue this fake-sounding man from another universe. I can do that with Arch. They're your teammate. Yeah, she answered. Okay, enough of this. Tell me what's wrong or I'll punch you in the face. Graelyn looked at her. That's No, please? Kinnan sighed. I wasn't serious. I could not tell from your inflection. Rude. Sorry. What's wrong? I'm just... Graelyn leaned back in her chair. Tired. Okay, I'm tired. I can send someone else on the mission. Every Dawn agent needs a break. Graelyn looked at the wall and laced her fingers together. It's not that. It's not even that I don't like Arch. I care about him more than anyone else. I love his stupid shell face. And don't you dare tell him I appreciate him. You've said that to his face before. So Graelyn held up a finger, pulling back her lips, then fell back in her chair again. Well, that's just it, isn't it? Arch and I are a team. We have friends. We work together on things. And I like that. But I'm used to being alone. I'm used to not having to worry about other people, to give a damn about them. I've cut people out of my life as a hobby. It's what I'm used to, and I got damn good at it. And I'm just having trouble getting used to all this. Kinnan nodded. Tell you what, you finish this mission, you can have some alone time, solo. Choose a place and time, another reality, hop over there and do whatever you like. Sound like fun? Sounds like a deal. So where are we going? Denny's. Graelyn bobbed her head from side to side. All right, Grand Slam breakfast it is then.
1972, Denny's, Milwaukee, Tuesday.
Graelyn and Arch ate their food while Graelyn occasionally stole glances at the people eating at the table across the way from them. There were a lot of men in black suits at the diner, which was not at all surprising considering that's Richard Milhouse Nixon. Milhouse? Arch queried? Like on The Simpsons? No, like the president of the former United States of America. The first one to ever resign from office. Arch made a sort of electronic hum that Graelyn assumed was supposed to be a huh. He must be here for the Foobles concert. I never would have thought him a fan. I wouldn't have thought anyone a fan since I've never heard of a band called the Foobles. You hadn't heard of Nixon. You hadn't heard of the band either. Okay, fair enough. And it's not like the U.S. presidents or something every kid knows. Arch stabbed at another piece of pancake with his fork and shoved it into the hatch under his chin, where she could hear the mechanisms begin grinding it up. The beautiful life of a cyborg. So, how do you know so much about them, Graelyn? My dad moved to Annapolis, remember? The old capital of the country that used to be nearby Washington, D.C. The place is basically just a big museum now. So when I visit my dad, he'd just take me there and I'd look at all the old historical stuff. I mean, Nixon was 500 years ago. Arch nodded. Yeah, I remember. But what's this guy doing here at Denny's? Graelyn frowned. He might just be here for how it looks, the visibility being a popular teen band concert, especially if it's televised. Arch said, we are secret agent time travelers. We could just ask him when he finishes talking to that guy in the white suit. Graelyn stared at Arch for a minute, as though she was pissed she hadn't thought of that idea herself, and then broke into a wide grin. Let's. But if we're going to do this, Arch, let's go all out.
Mr. President, he looked up from his orange juice to see a Secret Service agent standing with a bright-eyed young lady with cat-eye glasses holding a Foobles-branded notebook and wearing a "They Can't Lick Our Dick" pin with his face on it pinned to her blue sweater above a yellow polka dot skirt. She was next to... He wasn't exactly sure what the man was, but he was tall, wore a mask and a blue coat and cap. These two would like to talk to you if you have a moment. Oh, yes, of course. The girl slid into the booth, followed by the strange man. Oh, wow, the girl said, clearly excitable. I take it this is your first time meeting a president of the United States. It is, Mr. President. The man grunted. Good to meet you, Mr. President. Well, you're familiar with me? Tell me about yourselves. He took another bite of his toast as they answered, hoping to get as much down as he could before the little cretins expected him to answer. Oh, well, my name is Sally, and Mr. President, I'm such a big fan of yours. If I could have voted for you in 68, I would have, thanks to the 26th Amendment. I am so excited to be able to soon. He smiled. It's always exciting to meet one of the future mothers of America. She seemed to have an extra long pause. Sure. Sally here is interested in politics herself, the weird man cut in quickly. Oh, really? Are you part of our Young Republicans? She reached into her purse and pulled out her membership badge. Oh, good. We can't let our country be overrun by those commies, right? The girl nodded, over-enthusiastically. Oh, absolutely, Mr. President. I didn't realize on top of your policy ideals, you were also a Foobles fan. Nixon gave the warm, genuine smile he'd been practicing in the mirror just for this sort of occasion. Why, of course. I'm hip with the youth culture these days. I think the Foobles are a fine band, making some stellar music. Now, what's your favorite song, young lady? You shouldn't be rude to my heart, she answered. Why? He said with a paternal glow. Mine too. Now, if you don't mind, I need to get moving. Oh, of course, Mr. President, but if I could, she held the notebook out. Of course, he said, opening the notebook up and signing a page of it and writing a note inside. It's been a pleasure, Sally. Oh, it's been an absolute joy, she replied. They shook hands and the girl and the thing left. He didn't move. He got back to finishing his toast. Zeus is lightning on a laptop. What an asshole, Arch said. Did you hear how he talked to you? I mean, of course, you did. He was talking to you, but oh man, that was something else. Wasn't too bad, Graelyn said. Arch stopped and looked down at her, question marks flooding the screen he had for a face. Are you serious? I don't know, I always kind of admired Nixon. I thought you said he resigned in disgrace. I looked him up. Didn't he downright commit treason? Well, yes, but she screwed her face up. Look, I'm not the bad guy, Arch. I know that. Look, I've always known that, all right? Something deeper is wrong here, so out with it, Arch said, throwing his arms up in the Denny's parking lot. Graelyn could see the waitress watching them from the window. Graelyn started walking towards the car they'd stolen from the dealership earlier that day and shrugged. I don't know. Sometimes I say things and you react like I said something the villain in a bad sci-fi serial would say. You know, it makes me wonder if I'm supposed to be here, like I'm just fighting something inside me I'm never going to be able to beat. Great. I'm sorry, I didn't realize, and I didn't mean that. I know it's silly, but look, it's how I feel. It's not silly. Your feelings never are. Graelyn got in the car and leaned her head against the passenger side window. Let's talk about something else. Do you like the Foobles? Arch got into his car, hunching over a bit to fit in. I listened to their whole discography before we got here. I love them. They're boppy and fun. Gray laughed, watching a smile blossom on her own face in the window. Of course you do. Do you? Not in the slightest, Arch. As they pulled out of Denny's, Graelyn jerked her head back. She thought she'd seen two people in the rear view mirror watching them from the grass by the parking lot under a maple tree, but there was nothing there. She noted it for the future. Coming to you live from the Starling Ballroom in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it's the Creases Tobacco Greg Galloway Music Hour. I'm your host, Greg Galloway. Now, before we start, let me tell you about Creases Tobacco. Graelyn and Arch looked at each other in the audience. They're not really about to advertise this, are they? Arch asked. It's the 20th century, Arch. They're savages, Graelyn said, shaking her head. Creases Tobacco promotes healthy lungs, Greg Galloway said, not knowing he would die from lung cancer in 10 years, and tastes great, too. Arch shook his head. You know, Graelyn stated, the 25th century isn't the greatest. Interstellar War isn't fun, but it is. Is it bad that I feel a bit superior right now? No, Arch said. Now, before we start, we have a special guest for this performance, maybe the world's biggest Foobles fan, President Richard Nixon! Nixon rose from his box and waved at the audience and for the cameras. There were a lot of cheers as well as some jeers from some young people. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the band that's been rocking the chart, the Foobles! The curtains rose and the audience broke into uproarious screams and cheers. Next to Arch, a girl began screaming and crying, keeling over in her seat, screaming over and over again till her voice became hoarse. Are you okay, miss? Arch, don't bother her. It's a 70s fangirl thing. Graelyn looked back up at the stage from the girl, and as the curtains finished rising, her jaw dropped. It dropped to the floor, and she had to pick it up and duct tape it back to her face. Behind the band on the stage was a giant backdrop that said, "Down with Dawn." The drum had a sort of inverted version of their Dawn logo, with a crescent moon seeming to put out the sun. "Hello, Milwaukee!" the lead singer Mikey Ropes yelled into the microphone. "You're in for a treat today because you're about to get to hear the first ever performance of our concept album, Down with Dawn. It's in its entirety before anyone else." Graelyn and Arch looked at each other. Graelyn began to get up. "Our first song is called Graelyn Sides Don't You Dare Move, There's a Bomb Under the Venue." Graelyn sat down. "Just kidding, it's actually called From Dusk to Dawn." Graelyn sat on her hands and looked around at the rest of the audience. This was not going right. The band was supposed to be endangered. She'd assumed maybe someone was going to try to screw up history by killing Nixon and the band in one shot. This she did not anticipate. She didn't even know what it was. For the first time in a long time, she felt off-kilter. She traveled through time to other realities, and had become as commonplace as anything else to her. She and Arch were good at their jobs, but they flitted through. They left before they could set down any serious ties for the most part. They never arrived with people knowing they were here and writing a rock opera about them. "Hey, hey, hey, from dusk to dawn I'll keep you sane. Hey, 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 from light till dark you find your space. But when did I say that my space was yours? And you could walk into my life to tear it up more. You thought you had the greatest day, but Grey Girl, you're not safe. Hey, 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 from dusk to dawn you're never safe." Arch reached his hand over, and she could see a message displayed on the screen on the back of his hand. "I scanned the venue. There is a bomb." She nodded and began to trace out letters for her response into Arch's hand. "Can your hand go get it?" A new message flashed up. "I can try." Arch's hand detached at the wrist and crawled down his leg onto the floor. He put that wrist into his coat pocket quickly. His hand scrambled around the sneakers and shoes on the concrete floor, fingers springing up into leaps over dropped cups and popcorn bags. It bumbled down the steps levels till it found a ventilation duct. It pulled the grate off and then hopped down, falling into another duct. It clambered through it, fingertips magnetizing against the airflow. It could sense the bomb and its futuristic energy and wave signatures that stood out like a sore thumb in 1972. It reached the closest exit in the vent system to the bomb and knocked out another vent grate, dropping 9 feet to a cold, slightly damp floor in a room filled with pipes. A rat that happened to be sniffing around the floor looked at the hand, and it lit up its screen carapaces in a neon disco, sending the rat fleeing. It crawled to the bomb, a mess of electronics and wires, and the tip of its index finger flicked out, jacking into a part of the bomb. Like all good bombs, there was a nice screen counting down on the bomb, showing how much time was left, but it honestly wasn't any rush. Arch's hand had gotten there with plenty of time to spare, so there's no point pretending to build tension that when he disarmed it, there was only a few seconds left. There were like 20 minutes. "Done," he said, and a wave of relief washed over Graelyn. "Great, now get your hand back up here." The hand began to do just that when it was speared to the floor. "Gotcha," someone said, picked up by the hand's microphone as it began to lose power. The fingers flailed as it turned off. Arch turned to Graelyn, a red exclamation mark on his face. "Someone killed my hand." The Foobles kept singing. "From dusk to dawn, your hand is gone. From dusk to dawn, did you ever think you're wrong?" Graelyn grabbed Arch's elbow. "We're going now." The pair rose, trying to shove their way past the other members of the audience and into the aisle. "And now, for our second number, you can run, but you can't hide." Graelyn said an expletive not suitable for a family-friendly music venue as they barreled down the aisle to the exit. Arch shoved the door to the exit theater open and they ran into the lobby, where the exits were being locked by the staff. In front of them was a young lady wearing a close-fitted set of light armor made of a white cloth-like material with bits of black metal laid over it. She had white hair and no glasses, but otherwise looked exactly like Graelyn Sides. On the breast of her armor was the same logo of the crescent moon crushing the sun they'd seen on the drums. Behind them, a second figure seemed to bleed out of the wall as their camouflage turned off, barring the way back. It looked just like Arch, but without a coat or hats. This plain armored carapace made of screens, A sword slid out of Arch's arm, and he stood ready. Hello, Graelyn. I've been wanting to meet you for a while now. You've developed a reputation, especially that escapade with the journalist and the book of books. She walked closer. I knew you were my opposite, but I expected an equal. Oh, shut it, Graelyn replied. I've met myself before, over and over. You're nothing special. This is just reality being an inter-universal traveler. You can spare me the self-righteous indignation, other Graelyn. Oh, I'm not Graelyn, she said, touching her breastplate with feigned candor. My name is Blanche Combine. Behind you is my companion, Apollonius Ausonarabe. We share so much, nearly the same genes aside from your hair, and we even went on nearly the same journey. Clearly not. I said nearly. I came to some rather different conclusions. Blanche drew a pistol from a holster at her hip and right up to Graelyn, putting the gun in her face. Arch tensed, but Graelyn gently shook her head as Apollonius clenched a fist behind them. Are those real glasses? I heard you still had your original eyes for some idiotic reason. Blanche pulled the glasses from Graelyn's face with the barrel of the gun and picked them up with her other hand. Graelyn squinted to see her properly, and Blanche laughed. Oh my God, they are! You little narcissist! You couldn't even get your eyes fixed. There's nothing wrong with my eyes, Graelyn yelled. Then why are you still wearing these, huh? Blanche said, waving the glasses in her face. Graelyn reached up to snatch them, but found the gun pressing back into her forehead and lowered her hand. Blanche dropped the glasses and crunched them under her heavy boot. Oh yeah, my pal Apollonius there gave me a gift. She held up Arch's broken hand. I see you're just having a stellar day, you two, aren't you? Stop playing with us, Arch said firmly. What do you want? Apollo and I are part of a group called Dusk. Creative! How long did you have to look up the name Dawn before you came up with that? Graelyn said. Blanche bared her teeth. Unlike you, we know how things are going to end. Oh, yeah? Yeah. A year earlier, Blanche and Apollonius stepped into the bubble the leader of Dusk had made for them. She adjusted her glasses and looked out of it. I don't see anything. Look closer, Dusk's leader said. She leaned in. They were right. There wasn't just nothing. There was a conspicuous absence of anything. It wasn't just that it was empty space. It's that it wasn't space. It wasn't anything. I don't understand, she said, looking back at them. Apollonius shook her head. I do, Blanche. We're beyond the end of the universe. Nothing's here. There's no future. Nothing happens after it. There's no new rebirth. We just fade away. Exactly, Dusk's leader said. Blanche touched the edge of the bud bulb. But we exist here, so there must be a way for things to go on, right? Perhaps, the leader said. But do you want that? Do either of you want that? Apollonius, your family, you lived a lie. You were told nothing existed outside the space station you were born on, but that wasn't true. He shook his head. No, they died for nothing, leaving you alone. And have any of your attempts to get vengeance made you feel better? He was silent. Blanche, your mother, she was an abusive monster, but you survived, you lived on, and what has that gotten you? The universe has kicked you while you were down. It's an evil place. Inherently, it can't be saved or redeemed. The leader of Dusk stretched out their hands towards the nothing. Creation was not just an error, but a curse. Why should we have to feel? Who gave us existence? Some say the gods, Apollonius said. I'm just one, Blanche added. Or there was nothing supernatural, it was just a confluence of chance. Whatever made us, the leader said, whether it was mind or matter, shouldn't we blame it for our troubles? Whatever it is, it doesn't last. It withers and dies like everything it made. Then what's the point, Blanche said. What should we even do? We, the leader said, should kill it. Reject our own creation, but not be so selfish as to end our own lives. No, we're ending the system that put it all into place. That's what Dusk is. We're saying enough is enough. We're snuffing out the candle of the universe, turning off the dawn, beyond light or darkness into a pure nothing, a nothing where the idea of light and dark can't even be thought. Apollonius shook his head. There still has to be some way. The leader laughed. I have one more thing to show you. Blanche and Apollo found themselves in a vast field of dry grass, looking up at a red sky filled with crystal orbs linked by sizzling cracks of lightning. Welcome to the future of your own world. Your own world invaded by, some council, the great assimilation, taking over universes in their vainglorious war, an interstellar war. The fun of the 25th century. Is that Moscow? Blanche said, looking down at the city below. It is, and right now, countless groups are trying to stop this battle. From dawn to the nights of sky to the firmament, the bigwigs, they'll all fail. Blanche fell to her knees, grabbing the dry grass. Blanche! She heard someone yell. She turned and scrambled up and saw someone wearing armor running towards her. On her arm, she recognized a symbol, someone she'd met in her previous adventures. The bird there was the finch, the symbol of the Alice MacLeod's revolution. She had to be her friend Alice. She ran towards her, forgetting the leader of Dusk, and the finch took their helmet off, but it wasn't Alice, it was her friend E. E? Yeah, Blanche, I never thought I'd see her again. We're nearly overrun here. Where's Alice? E shook her head. Alice died months ago, I'm sorry. Blanche took a step back. No. I'm sorry, Blanche, but we're still fighting here. I've been leading the resistance against the great assimilation. I don't know what to do. Blanche looked back at the leader of Dusk. Can we help them? They shook their head. This universe is too far gone. Blanche held up a finger to E and ran back to the leader of Dusk. We have to be able to do something. We can take E and these other people, take them somewhere else, help them escape, save them. Leader gestured at the burning city in the sky filled with crystal moons. This will just befall the next place you take them, and the next, and the next. Nothing matters. Blanche's shoulders fell, and in that moment she decided the leader had to be right. She'd seen the emptiness here. She remembered the blame her parents had placed on her when her brother died, the hollow care of her mother, the beatings she took when her mother wanted to give them to her. She bared her teeth and placed her hands on her head. Had none of it been worth it? Was all of it empty? It was. And in her hopelessness, she felt a peace she'd never known before. What would you have me do then? Join Dusk, the leader said, and be merciful. Put all of it out of its misery. Blanche nodded. I understand. Apollo? He nodded. The universes. All of them, they aren't worth saving. The leader's right. Then I have to do something before we leave, Blanche said. I understand, the leader replied. Blanche walked up to E. Hey, look, we have a plan to get you guys out of here, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? E nodded. Of course, what do you need? I need your gun. E gave it to her with a smile. Blanche checked the gun, made sure the safety was off, and shot E in the center of her forehead. She crouched down over the body and kissed E on the cheek. I know you wouldn't understand, but if you did, you'd thank me. She looked back at Apollo, who looked shocked. It was a mercy killing, Apollo will. Just the first of them. All of them mercy killings. After she'd finished talking, Graelyn stared at her for a moment. You're messed up, Graelyn concluded. You're really messed up, Blanche. I've just accepted reality, Graelyn. Why can't you? Because I'm not in some weird cult that thinks ending the universe and killing your own friends is a jolly good time. I lived through everything you did, and I didn't come up to that conclusion. Everything you did, I did too. Except when it got to that point, I didn't join a crazy cult. It's not a cult. It's a paramilitary secret society. And I don't take pleasure in it, Graelyn. It's a necessity. Hey, Arch cut in. Can I give you a hand? Blanche looked at him quizzically as Arch detached his remaining hand and threw it, underhand, at Blanche, on whose arm it casually latched onto. There were 3 seconds where everyone stood in total silence. Everyone just stared at the hand latched onto Blanche, and then, as if the universe had grown exhausted from holding still, everything broke into chaos. Blanche tried to pull the trigger on her gun, but the hand leapt from one arm to the other, knocking her arm back and crawling down to her arm to try to wrestle the gun away from her hand. Apollo sprang at Arch, blades flinging out of his cybernetic forearms, and Arch spun to meet them, the resulting clash ringing throughout the room. Graelyn ran at Blanche, pulling out her "they can't lick our dick" badge and pulling the pin back. As Blanche focused on the gun, Graelyn jabbed her in the cheek with the "can't lick our dick" pin, causing Blanche to yelp out in pain. Her hands flailed for a moment, and Arch's hand wrapped around the handle of the gun on the floor. Arch leapt backward, his tank-like body demolishing the side of the concession stand. Apollo followed and brought another blade down, which Arch parried. Hey, guess what I have? Arch tried to make a blow with his other arm blade. No, really, guess. Don't be like that, Apollo said. Look, I really don't know. Hands, Apollo said, as he swirled to parry and grabbed hold of Arch's forearm with his hand. Ah, Arch said with some concession. That would make sense. Apollo began to bend his arm with all his strength, Arch resisting equally, the sound of motors straining, growing louder and louder. Blanche pulled the pin from her cheek. That hurt, she said as she looked back at Graelyn to see her holding her own gun to her head. Ease gun. Ah, Blanche replied, with some concession. I suppose it didn't hurt that much. Hey, Apollonius, Graelyn yelled. How much do you like your friend? Apollo looked back, and she watched his carapace turn a light blue. Blanche, he said, his voice crackling through the speakers. Finish the mission, Apollo. It's what we're here for. Graelyn shoved her pistol into Blanche's temple, pressing it against her skin. You won't, Apollo? Do you know how I know that? He didn't speak, but the word how appeared on his face. Because if you two are anything like me and Arch, then I'd trust him with my life. I care about him, and you're going to let Arch go. Because you don't want to watch the universe die alone. They stared each other down. And then the door opened, and the Secret Service entered, followed by President Richard Nixon. Terrible show. I can't believe they talked me into coming here. Naturally, the sight of two nearly identical sets of people holding their mere twins at a standstill was something that gave them a bit of pause. What on earth? It's not what it looks like, Blanche yelled. Okay, I'm not actually sure what it looks like, but it sure looks like something that whatever it is, it's not that. Great talking, Blanche, Graelyn said. Nixon sighed. Don't tell me, he said, rubbing his forehead. You're from space or time travelers or something. What? Arch said from his position being pinned. That sounds fake. Time travel is impossible. I mean, people can't even go to space, Apollo added. They've already been to space, Blanche and Graelyn said in unison before grimacing at each other and adding, and the moon in another set of unison. Look, you're not the first people that you have run into. So Sally and whoever the other two of you are, I'd really like to not get involved. It's not a matter of national security. I'm not Sally. My name is Graelyn, and I'm a Russian spy from the future. There was a pause. Okay, but not like you're thinking. Apollo looked over. I think we got what we wanted from here, right, Blanche? Blanche bit her lip. Yeah, I suppose we did. Let him go. Apollo let Arch go, and Graelyn backed away from Blanche, lowering the gun. Blanche scampered back over to Apollo, and the pair headed for the door. Think about what we told you. This won't be the last time we meet, Blanche yelled. Graelyn rolled her eyes and went over to Arch as his hand crawled back to him. We're going to need to get you a new hand. Arch shrugged. It's not a big deal. We sold them at the store. Nixon awkwardly walked past them. Goddamn time travelers. This month's Tales by the Blue Light was brought to you by the gum you find underneath a bench that you kind of want to eat, but you also know it's really gross and someone else chewed that, and who even knows how old it is at this point? Ugh. But maybe it still has flavor. No, don't think that. Why is your brain like this? The gum under the park bench. Hey, it's safer than eating Tide Pods. Oh, wait, we're getting another signal here from the blue light. Ah, yes. It looks like we're picking up something from an abandoned missile silo in the middle of nowhere, Utah. That's right, it's time for everyone's favorite part of this show, Monster Hunter Monthly. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Monster Hunter Monthly. I'm your long-suffering host, Magpie Jones. Just let me close the lid of my carnivorous baby dragon box. This baby dragon is a real pain, and I'm not very happy that my sweet, adoring brother Albatross dropped it off here when he came to visit over Christmas. I mean, did he even compliment me about how I managed to get a massive fir tree down into an abandoned missile silo to celebrate Christmas? Of course not. You only think about yourself, Albatross. I'm sure grateful to take care of a small dragon that I have to keep in a fireproof box. This is actually the second box, mind you, because on the last one I made the mistake of putting holes in every side of the box for a fire-breathing dragon. Whew. But I digress. Everyone meet Wally! He's my brand new pet that I have to take care of against my will. Say hi, Wally! What a cute thing. Alright, anyways, after a long 2017, we're glad to be back here in 2018 to start this new year off right. Or at least as right as we can, being with how far, it's gone so far. I'm sure you've already heard about the big disaster in Boise, Idaho. There were a lot of good monster hunters we lost there, and I'm not sure how the nationwide hunting community is going to deal with the loss. We've known werewolves were a problem, but until recently, they seem to be something we could contain. Clearly not anymore. But why keep worrying about shape-shifting, changing monsters that can eat our faces off? We've got more important things to worry about, like my reader mail. It's always great to receive letters from you folks about your monster-related worries. So let's get to some of our questions for this month. Dear Magpie, my sister has begun sprouting scales, and during that time we're forced to put her in the bathtub and fill it up with water where she's unable to breathe. What can we do about this, and what has happened to her? Signed, Fish Friend in Massachusetts. Hi, Fish Friend. While werewolves are the most common form of supernatural creature that involves a human changing into another creature, there are actually quite a large number of other creatures that do that. Well, I've frankly never heard of a werefish before, and that's kind of weird. It sounds like your sister has to be one. So hey, score one for learning new things today, huh? Most were creatures have an easy schedule you can figure out. She might turn into a fish, along with the phases of the moon, or sun, or seasons, or tide, or if you're really unlucky, some constellation or something. Just start tracking when it happens, and accept that she's going to be turning into a fish person from now on, and you'll just have to accept that. Good luck, and don't buy her fish food. She'll probably still want pizza. Just don't go down that road. Another letter. Dear Magpie, I've started dating a vampire. I didn't realize they were a vampire at first, but it's become pretty obvious after I could never meet them out in sunlight and they had to keep drinking red wine with every meal that did not smell like red wine. We've been dating for a few months now, but I'm starting to get bothered by some of my partner's comments about eating me. This is a normal letter, everyone. Wow. I'll catch them staring at my neck every so often and licking my lips. Or they'll just say something like, "You're lucky I like you so much because, oh man, I'm really thirsty and could use a drink." It's just getting kind of weird. Any advice? From Lovelorn in Evansville, Indiana. Great. Hi, Lovelorn. Well, that sucks. Hopefully not literally. Look. Having your partner want to devour your flesh, I've got to be open here, it isn't great. Once I had a partner who it turned out was a cannibal. And let me tell you, that was an awkward dinner when they opened up about that. Not only did they mislead me about what cooking together meant, but I had to call the FBI, and that is never fun. I at least got a cool FBI trucker hat out of it, which, let me tell you, still looks really rad on one of the mannequins I have here, all of the missile silo, but still probably not worth getting almost eaten. You should talk to your partner and just be open about the fact that you don't want to have your lifeblood drained, leaving you a dying husk. It might be hard, but it's a conversation you'll have to have at some point. Communication and honesty are a key in relationships, and yours is no exception to that. So let me know how things go, Lovelorn. Well, that about does it here from Monster Hunter Monthly. The dragon is acting up again. I think it wants a bottle. All right, well, till next time then, gentle listeners, don't die. This episode of Tales of Blue Light was brought to you by a post-apocalyptic future where everyone is running around in the desert in underwear and hockey equipment. What will you do when the world ends? Stock up on supplies? Try to rebuild civilization? We know that those answers are for losers. After all, what good is living after everyone screwed up the earth if you can't look absolutely rad in your underwear and a hockey pad on one shoulder while driving around in a dune buggy you inexplicably found somewhere? Just say no to a practical future. Everyone failed you and it led to nuclear war, or the Earth's resources drying up, or who cares? And if the people in charge didn't care, then why is it your responsibility to clean up their mess? Instead, try giving yourself the kind of cool name 4th graders give themselves on the playground and putting some nails in a baseball bat. The post-apocalyptic future, just because the world's over, doesn't mean your style life has to be. Alright, it looks like the blue light is calling in another story for us. And this one is our horror piece for the week, and it looks like we're going to be going back to the 1970s and someone we met in a previous tale. In a story we're calling The Denny's Crossroads and Mr. Nixon. Mr. Nixon, when exactly was your first contact with the devil? The president stared into his black coffee. I don't know what you're talking about, and if I did, I know I wouldn't give you any credence by speaking to it. Mr. President, the agent said, slower, you've heard the tape. He picked up the coffee and took a drink, hissing as the molten blue scorched his tongue. Well, he said, keeping his eyes on the steam, that was the only one we recorded. We know, Mr. President, we did listen to all the tapes. He sighed, closing his eyes. Whatever committee sent you here, I can offer more. What's at stake is far more than an American president. It's the American presidency. If this investigation wins, you know what it'll do to the American public when they find out you're a treasonous crook? I don't care, Mr. President. Nixon opened his eyes. You think you can just talk to me that way? A finger waved at the agent's face. You think you're protected just because you work for the CIA or the FBI because you answer to some no-name senator, probably a Democrat. I guess I can see it in your eyes. The agent, who had not removed his black sunglasses in the dark room, raised an eyebrow 1/16 of an inch. You filthy lowlife scum, you let me out of this room this instant, or I'll have your house burned down. Maybe your family's on a plane that crashes. Maybe you'll find your kids gotten in the medicine cabinet. You'll find them gibbering on the floor. You never know. I'm the president of the goddamn United States of America, and you're gonna let me go. The agent pulled out a handkerchief, and only after he was sure Nixon was done, began to wipe the spittle from his face. Mr. President, I could care less if you did half the things you just accused yourself of implicitly. I'm here explicitly to deal with your dealings with Lucifer, the Prince of Lies, the Morning Star, the Fallen. By chance, he replied, almost with an air of hope. You're, not with those British people, aren't you? The ones with the blue thing? The agent tilted his head to the side slightly, and another agent, dressed identically, appeared out of the shadows and whispered something into his ear. I'm familiar with the interests you're speaking of. No, we're not affiliated with the British people. What about those? What about those some guys? The rude Russian girl and the plastic knight? No. Mr. President, we work for the American people. Our job is to protect them against supernatural menaces, not alien ones or people from the future. Nixon's shoulders slumped down. I see. There are a lot of you. You're not so special. Even so, we're here. The other agent, at least it looked similar enough to the other agent, there was no point belaboring the point, slipped back into the shadows and put a manila folder in front of the agent, who flipped it open. Regardless of how things progress with your administration, I won't resign, he spat. It's my job to make sure we have a record of what happened in every president's interactions with the supernatural, which we have kept going back to President John Hancock. He wasn't president, Nixon said. As I said, my job isn't time travel. So let's start with the beginning. When was the first time you saw the devil? It was on a lake. When I was just a small boy, Nixon said. Dick ran through the woods, enjoying the crunching sound under his feet. He'd tired of baseball. The other boys seemed more concerned with taking in between the rounds. Not that he minded talking, he was good at that. And he loved doing things he was good at. But they just weren't talking about anything interesting. The rest of the boys were a few years older, something which hadn't bothered him before now, and all they wanted to do was talk about how Henry had given Tracy Montgomery a hickey now. He didn't care, so it was time to do something else. Maybe, he thought, there was something going on at the lake. At the very least, he could strip down and swim. He broke through the last of the trees and reached the lake. There was something going on here. A deer struggled on the ground. The naked man and woman holding it as they could in its bindings as the man slid his chest open and the woman reached her hand in under the rib cage and pulled out its still beating heart. She took a bite and handed it to her partner, who also partook like Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit. Dick stared. He didn't run or look away, and for their part, they may well have not have noticed him. He wondered what would happen next, thought he should flee, but then the water started to bubble. It was tall, the thing that rose from the lake. Its horns crested the water first as it walked toward them from the lake bottom. Then its skull-like head appeared, coated in only a thin layer of sickly skin with pinprick red eyes. Its body, if it was a body, was a soggy cloak. Pale hands with long white-gray fingers and jagged nails slipped out of the ends of its 2 long sleeves. It got closer and came more and more out of the water. It became clear its proportions were wrong. Its head was too high off its shoulders, like someone had just stacked a fake head on top of a real one underneath, and for a moment he thought it was some sort of elaborate costume. Then it put its cloven feet onto the shore, and he had no more doubts. It looked between them, and they bowed before it. "My lord," the woman said. "Only one," the tall thing said. The pair exchanged a glance. What do you mean, my lord?" the man asked. "Only one," it repeated. "We're here together as your..." He didn't finish his sentence. The woman had picked up the knife from on top of the deer's corpse and slit his throat. The look of betrayal in his eyes was salivating. It looked up at him. "And what of you, child?" The agent adjusted his glasses. "And what then?" I ran," Nixon said, "as hard as I could." The agent shuffled his papers. "Mr. Nixon, I was the impression you never wore a bathing suit on the beach and just wore a full tracksuit, and that you didn't even like golf or fishing." Nixon stared at him. "What do you think you're implying?" "When exactly did that story take place?" the agent swerved. Nixon stared at him, and he stared back, till finally Nixon let his shoulders slump down. "It would have been a better beginning, all right? Okay, the first time I met the devil was at a Denny's in Wisconsin." The agent's steely face gave a very expressive twist. "Are you serious, Mr. President?" Nixon sighed. "I'm serious. It was just before my re-election." Nixon was enjoying his toast when a man slipped into the seat across from him. Usually the Secret Service screened these people, layabouts who wanted to have a word with him on this issue or that issue. He worked every one of them. He enjoyed swaying them, watching them change what they thought, even if they didn't think they were changing what they thought. It was one of life's small pleasures. This man, though, struck him instantly as something else. "What can I do for you? Did Charles here screen you?" The man grinned, a toothy grin. His teeth were whiter than his white suit, but his gums looked like they'd been rubbed with ash. He had close, cropped, blonde hair and eyes Nixon were fairly certain were blue behind rose-colored aviator sunglasses. "Mr. Nixon, Tricky Dick. Many of many names you are. It is a pleasure to finally meet you." Nixon narrowed his eyes at the man. "I'll ask again. What can I do for you?" The man smiled. "Like I said, just a fan. Wanted to introduce myself. It's rare you get to meet someone else in the profession, so to say. It's good to keep up industry contacts, if you catch my drift." The man pulled out a Croesus brand cigarette and lit it, taking a drag and blowing the smoke in an expert swirl that Nixon thought was half impossible. He held the pack out to Nixon, but he waved it away. "All right, so you work in government. I don't recognize you, so you can't be a quarter when you're talking yourself up to me." The man grinned again, keeping the cigarette between his teeth. Now, Dickie, my boy, don't be so rude. You have to worry about me sooner or later. My administrative skills are brutal, you know. Stop talking about the shop. Take it or quit posturing. Who are you? He let the grin drop away. "I thought I said not to be rude. You should learn some manners." "Fair enough. As you said, you're a busy man." He lifted his glasses up, and Nixon looked into his eyes. In hindsight, Nixon expected to see a rolling fire, endless suffering and torture. Instead, he saw something incomprehensible to him. A vast nothing, inescapable and unfathomable. He felt like he'd reach out his hand and scream, and neither would ever reach another living soul. In that great epic darkness, he was utterly alone, falling forever without a friend, without sense, without the hope of light at the end, because the light was gone forever. He was alone, and alone he would be. Alone aside from the delight he knew someone was feeling and watching him suffer and pang. In a way, it was the only thing he could hold on to, that someone was gaining joy from the hell he was living in. And then he knew where he was, and knew who was watching him, and who was sitting across from him. The man grinned. "Call me Mr. Scratch." "You're the goddamn devil!" Nixon sputtered. His heart was pounding. Was the chair under him real? He could feel his touch stronger than he ever felt a chair before. The crumbs of toast in his mouth tasted like loaves. He could feel his stubble growing out so slowly, and every tiny advance of the hair seemed like a marathon. But he was here. The darkness was gone. The devil. Well, maybe it's true, but I always preferred a good old name like Lucifer Morningstar, but Mr. Scratch will do. Takes the edge off, mind you. People don't like edges. Just like those old maces you could whack a man with and not draw blood. Sure, you're still killing the guy, but you feel better about yourself for a few minutes. Give me a stick to the lie. Tastes better to your tongue. How's the food tasting, by the way, Richard? He was chugging his orange juice now, calling the waitress over to give him another one. It tasted like ambrosia, like the first time he'd gone on a swing and felt the air under his feet, like watching his dogs point at squirrels on the White House lawn. Tastes fine, he told Satan. Satan reached over and took a piece of toast, crunching on it. Tastes pretty good, if you ask me, he replied. Why'd you show me that? What was the point? What's your game, Mr. Scratch? Why, no game here. You asked me to show you. I didn't ask for that. Scratch shrugged. Tomato. But like I said earlier, I just came because I wanted to meet you. Nixon wiped the sweat he felt beading on his brow away with his napkin. And what, you're going to offer me something now? Take me to the top of the mountain and offer me the world. Lucifer threw his head back and laughed. No one in the diner reacted to the laugh, but it sounded like a car crashing into a herd of screaming sheep. Lucifer whipped his head back. Is that why you think I came here? Oh, Dickie boy. The agent waited as Nixon stared off his right to the wall. And? He finally asked, after the silence had stretched on too long even for him. And he left. Without telling you why he came, Nixon nodded without meeting his eyes. That seems unlikely. Well, I can't help you with that. What's real to you and what isn't? You and your boys will just have to be content with not knowing the mysterious universe like the rest of us. The agent shuffled his papers in front of him. And that was the last time you encountered this Mr. Scratch. Nixon tilted his head to the side. Not entirely. I didn't see him again, but on the day of the Watergate hearings began, I got a bottle of my favorite wine, Chateau Lafite Rothschild. Good vintage, too. It just showed up on my desk in the Oval Office, chilling in a bucket of ice. On it was a note. The agent gestured for him to continue. It was short. It just said, adieu, and then was signed Mr. Scratch. The agent jotted this down. Did you drink it? Of course, I wouldn't waste good wine. What about the audio tape? Well, I told my advisors I'd met the devil. Hardly seems there's anything worth covering there. Delete it. Or at least that portion of it. Nixon chuckled. I already did. He didn't feel like noting what else was on that portion of the tape, but that would do well enough. The agent nodded. Well then, unless you have anything else to add, Mr. President, I'd say we're done here. About time, Nixon said, getting up and heading for the door as the agent in the shadows came forward to open it. He walked through the door, making his shoulders as broad as he could manage, and strutted down the hallway, broadcasting to everyone inside that he was President of the United States, goddammit, and they would know it. Then he reached the bathroom, turned into it, and slid into a stall, latching the door behind him. He slumped his shoulders down and let himself breathe, as heavy as his body was begging him to. He remembered what Scratch had told him. You thought this was going to be a Christmas carol, my boy? Did I give you a taste of heaven and you see how you could change your ways, my boy? I'm only showing you because I know you're not going to stop. I was watching when you sabotaged the Vietnam peace talks. Make sure your war would go on years more so you could get an election. Oh, that was clever. And you stepped over 20,000 bodies of your own men to do it. Not to mention all the Vietnamese who died too. Such a victory. Such a grand vision. You won't stop at anything to win. To keep your hand clenched on the throttle of power. I don't have to offer you anything for you to go to hell, Dickie boy. I don't even have to set you on the right path. I just have to pull up a chair and grab a drink. Devils only tempt the righteous. Like I said, I admire someone else in the profession. Nixon stabilized his breathing and left the stall, splashing water on his face in the sink. He looked at himself in the mirror. Scratch didn't know what he was talking about. He'd survive Watergate. He'd survive the devil. He'd survive it all. This wasn't his hubris or ego. Yes, of course. It was practicality. But everyone was watching him. Everyone was out to get him. That wasn't paranoia. That was reason. Nixon walked into the bathroom and began to strut down the hall as the bulbs in the hallway blew, and he was cast into a long, deep darkness. All right, we've got one last story for you tonight. It's short, and we'll follow it with our usual little short radio play to finish things off for tonight. Then we have our little tiny dose of fantasy for tonight, and a ditty I'm calling The Glow Tree. That's not a normal tree, I said, at the glowing fruit swaying from the shimmering branches. Well, of course it's not. It's not a normal tree, is it? At least not for you. She reached up and touched one of the fruits, and it turned from blue to orange. Are you sure these aren't just really fancy lights or something? She laughed. A human would say that. I wasn't buying the whole, I'm a fairy thing. Sure, she looked weird, but a lot of people in Portland looked weird. The whole self-expression thing. Her eyes looked a bit too big, but I figured that was makeup and some of those weird contacts Lady Gaga used to make herself look kind of alien. She lifted up the fruit gently in her cupped hands. It flashed a shifting rainbow of colors, the light splashing over her face. She smirked and broke the stem with her right hand. There you go, one fairy fruit. She held it close to my face. I don't really trust that thing. Her smirk turned into a toothy grin, and she reached behind her while holding her eye contact with me and picked another fruit from the tree. She took a big, juicy bite of it, her mouth a neon glow as she chewed and swallowed. See? Safe for consumption. Come on then, Archie, take a bite. I looked down at the strange fruit and relented. It was probably some weird drug thing, but hey, it was a Friday night. Grabbing it from her, I took a much less sloppy bite. It tasted like... Well, it tasted like that feeling when the house is cold and you slip into bed and it's already warm under the covers. I stumbled back a bit, my feet sliding on the rain-wet leaves. Good, is it? She asked. Things started going dark. I could only see her glowing mouth and the glowing tree, her rainbow lips opening wide in a fit of laughter as I collapsed onto the ground. I felt like I fell farther than I did, all the way through the leaves, down to the center of the earth, where it only got colder. The tree was just a normal tree. I ran my fingers along it, the rough bark catching on my skin, and I made a full circle around it. There's no sign that anything strange had been there. Dude, you were drugged, Clarice said. I didn't feel drugged, I replied. Okay, well, not till I took a bite of the glowing fruit. Then I felt drugged. But everything before that was clear. I mean, I had a few beers, nothing hard. She shook her head. She slipped you something. Oh my God, you're an idiot, you know? I can handle myself, okay? I'm all grown up, just like this tree. The neon rave tree. Okay, shut up, look, it's just a tree now, but it wasn't last night. She checked the time on her phone and shook her head. Archie, look, she drugged you. Are you missing money? I frowned. Well, yeah, but... Report her to the cops. I pulled my lips back. I don't know her name. Clarice lowered her phone. Of course you don't, because you were drugged. I nodded, but wasn't sure I believed her or any of this. Even as I agreed that it was all in my head, I knew I couldn't leave the tree alone. I resolved to come back that night. If the tree was just a tree then, I'd know Clarice was right. So I coasted through the rest of my day, spending time with friends who were just all so relieved I was okay after what happened to me. I smiled and thanked them all, but I couldn't stop thinking of that tree. When night came, I went to it. I drove to the park, parked my car, and started making my way down the path in the woods, then veered off into the small, unmarked wilds. I had gear with me, including a flashlight, so I wasn't a total idiot. I crunched along the underbrush till I saw it. A glowing tree. I stopped and I saw it. The ball-like fruit hanging off of it. It was real! I broke from my help into a sprint, charging towards the glow and reaching the tree with an exuberance I hadn't felt in years. I ran my hands along its neon bark. It felt warm. Moving in, my head bumped into the fruit, and laughing, I pulled it off, lifting the orb to my mouth and taking a deep bite of the succulent fruit. I savored it, relishing being back at the tree, and promptly collapsed on its roots. The neon turned to shadows, and I felt like I was falling again through nothing. When I awoke, there were a pair of shoes in front of my face. black and white wingtips with white suit pants on the legs. I could see the bottom of a cane as well. Well, look here. It's a visitor I wasn't expecting to see here, but I can't let anyone find you by this tree, so I'll apologize about what's next. I tried to move, but I couldn't, and I felt someone grab hold of my arms and drag me away from the tree for quite some distance to another tree. Then that person walked away. I slowly began to regain my ability to move, and I cried out. I saw shapes moving towards me. People shapes. They got close to me, and I waved them over. Dude, one said, looking me over, you don't look so hot, man. I'd look better if you helped me up. I looked the guy up and down. He was just like some new age poser. Then what are you doing? I'm here with a guru, man. We're getting some sweet lessons in this fairy forest. I looked back at the forest. Fairies? Could it be? Plus, you woke up at a great time, and man, the radio just announced Nixon resigned. Groovy, right? I blinked. What year is it? It's 1974, my good dude. I looked back in the woods, unsure of where the tree I'd been dragged from was. You can never trust fairies, I muttered and stood up, unsure if I was ready to face the 70s. But whether or not I was, I'd tasted the forbidden fruit, and it was time to leave the garden. Alright, every month here at Tales by the Blue Light, we finish off our show with a short little radio play. And today I'm joined by the amazing Chris Matt. Yeah, so now that we have the real talent up on stage here,
Okay. It's me.
Alright, so we're starting this little skit, The Waters of Atlantis. Did you get it?
I did. Look, this has to be fake, right? There's no way this stuff is real.
I spent years trying to track it down, though. I've wanted to have it for even longer.
That doesn't answer the question. Is it real, Tim?
Well, I guess it depends on a lot of things.
You know, that's an understatement.
One jug of pure water from Atlantis. Atlantis, Joe, a city long lost into the depths of the ocean. And this is what they drank there millennia ago.
If Atlantis is even real. I mean, I really don't think it was, Tim.
Oh, hush. Look at it. The perfect form of the jug. The clay, the strange writing. Do you think that's Atlantean?
Or some gibberish someone carved on the jug. They probably Googled it. Where did you meet the guy that you got this from anyway?
Who? Mr. Scratch? I don't know. It took a lot of digging, but I found him eventually. Doesn't matter. Okay, it's crazy. But the goods is all that does.
Doesn't the source matter? I mean, Tim, honestly, I think this thing is filled with city tap water.
Don't you dare say that. This is a priceless relic. The water inside this is a blessing from a bygone age. It doesn't deserve your sniper mark city tap water.
Oh, okay, fine. Maybe it's filled like with Dasani or Ice Mountain or even Fiji water. The hopes are giving you a high-class quality ripoff. Are you happy with that?
You know what? I'd plan to keep it all to myself. But you can have a cup. One cup of water from a city that's sunk into the oceans. A land that's been forgotten by the ages. One glorious cup to shut up your ignorant mouth.
I guess. Oh, okay, fine. Pour some out.
I'm nervous to open the jug. Okay. Here we go. Well, it certainly has been sealed by time. The cap is stuck on tight. Don't worry, I've got a tool and a technique for this. All right, just jiggle to the left. All right, I think I've got it.
You're gonna break it.
Oh, almost.
Yeah.
I got it. Woo!
Oh, jeez. All right. Well, pour me now that you got to pour me some of that dumb water.
All right, one cup for you, one for me.
Cheers, I suppose.
Bottoms up.
Well, it certainly was old water.
I've never tasted anything so foul.
My whole mouth feels like it's infected.
Don't be so small-minded. This is a miracle.
So, are you going to be drinking any more of this miracle water?
No. Listen, though, don't you get it?
No.
It really was millennia-old water. Only water that old could be this disgusting. Man, this is real.
Well, how about you call up the museum and see if they'll try out your water?
Brilliant idea. I'll get them here right away. I'll show them all. The whole board of directors in the museum. Once they taste how awful this is, they'll have to believe me.
Tim, what are you doing?
Let me get my coat. I don't want to miss this. All right. So that's all for tonight from Tales by the Blue Light. Come back next month when we'll be sure to offer you more tales of fantastic, into the darkest depths of your horror, the brightest flights of your fancy, and the biggest dreams of your future. From all of us here at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois, keep your blue light shining. There's plenty more to see.